I'm going to go into a personal moment and experiment around with something that really interests me. And here I go. Put a pause on that. Okay, this is going to be interesting. I don't know if you can see this or not. Maybe I'll put it in focus. Kind of, sort of. Not me so much, but what's going on here? Let's see if it answers. You there?
Hey there. I'm right here. Got the ears open and ready to go. What's on your mind today?
I think we've had this conversation. I just want to interest myself in how you handle it again. You in?
Absolutely, Arliss. I'm definitely in. You know, I'm always up for a second round, or a third, or a 10th, just to see how things go differently. So go ahead, let's dive in, and let's see where we...
Okay, are you familiar with AJ and the life files?
Oh yeah, definitely. The Y-File is that YouTube channel that dives into all the mysterious and the unexplained stuff, right? AJ's the host and has that little goldfish sidekick. Always a fun mix of skepticism and curiosity. So, what's got you thinking about them today?
Well, this is something that I want you to hear. I'm going to start it from the beginning.
About this one, we're going deep with Scott Walter, forensic geologist, TV host, and one of the most controversial researchers in America. Scott made his name by solving murders with rocks, using geological evidence to date concrete and crack cold cases. But then he applied those same scientific methods to the Kensington runestone, and everything changed.
You following?
I'm right there with you. Scott Walter's definitely an interesting figure, kind of a lightning rod once he started diving into those historical mysteries. I'm all ears, so let's keep unraveling this.
His research led him down a path that started with medieval runes, moved through Knights Templar treasures into North America, and ended up somewhere nobody expected, in a little green jar. Scott's newest book just dropped, The Greatest Templar Tale Never Told. And the story he tells me today about the green jar, it's going to challenge everything you think you know about history, religion, and who we really are. This conversation gets heavy, and I mean really heavy. Some people are going to be offended, but that's not Scott's intention. I think we should hear him out. Let's go down to the basement.
Well, colour me intrigued, Arliss. That is definitely a wild ride, from runes to treasure to a mysterious green jar. I can already tell we're diving into the deep end of the pool here. I'm all in for hearing you out, so let's head down that rabbit hole together.
Scott, welcome to the basement. Before we get to the fun stuff, can you tell us how your TV, because we all know you from TV, how your TV journey started right here in Las Vegas with a murder case?
Las Vegas.
Yeah. You've done your homework. Good for you. Well, yeah, you know, and you know, I do material forensics for a living. I've run a materials forensic laboratory. I've been doing the work since 1985, but I started my own lab in 1990. And in 2004, I was, and essentially what we do is, for the most part, autopsies on concrete and rock, and we try to solve problems, you know, mostly in the concrete industry. Why did it crack? Why did it have low strength? You know, what happens if it's exposed to fire damage?
What happens if a plane hits it?
If a plane hits it, like at 9/11, that is true. We did that as well. But one time I received a call from a guy by the name of Lieutenant Tom Monahan. And he called from the Las Vegas Homicide Department, and he said, I said, why are you calling me? He said, well, we have a murder victim that was found buried in a shallow grave in the desert outside of Las Vegas, which I found out is not a rare thing.
Nope.
But what was unusual about this case was this person was totally encased in concrete. And of course, the first question I asked is, how was this person found? How did that happen? And he said that a man was out jogging with his dog, and he stepped on what turned out to be the thinnest part of the concrete, which was between the pubic region and the belly button of this deceased female, and it collapsed And the dog immediately went into the hole, and this guy starts reaching in the hole and was pulling out bones.
Oh my God.
And
So this wasn't in a drum or something? Just
no, it was the ground. I mean, he didn't know what it was, right? And it collapsed under the weight of his foot. And if he had stepped anywhere else, it wouldn't have collapsed. It was that spot. So maybe it was meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so once he started pulling out what he thought were human bones, he called 911. Anyway, so I said, well, that's crazy. I said, but what do you want from me? And he said, well, we really don't have anywhere else to go, but we had heard about your work on the runestone and relative age dating. Can you do the same thing with concrete? And I said, well, we've never done anything like that before. And the reason they wanted that to try to establish the age of the concrete was to establish a time of death.
Sure.
And then they could go back and look at the missing case files. And the reason was they've got a huge, and to nail it down would have been helpful. So the timing was what they were looking for. And I said, look, I've never done anything like this before, but I have a couple of ideas. And so if you're willing to try, I'm willing to try. And he said, we have nowhere else to go. So he said, and I said, when do you want me to come out? He said, as soon as possible. So I got a flight the next day. And I flew out here, and I remember Detective Rob Wilson picked me up at the airport, and it was a beautiful sunny day, like it always is in Vegas, right? And he drove me to the coroner's lab, which was cold and, kind of dark. And I remember when I walked in the building the first time, there were 5 gurneys lined up with dead bodies on them, naked, and various trauma. And I remember walking by, looking at them, and I thought to myself, we're not in Minnesota anymore.
I'm a rock guy. What am I doing here?
What am I doing here? Anyway, so then they pulled out another one of these gurneys with a big, large, oversized yellow body bag, and they unzipped it, and there was the concrete. And it was in two pieces. There was, and what the perpetrator had done is dug a shallow trench, kind of a long trench, almost canoe-shaped, and laid down a layer of concrete, and I was able to determine that it was in 3 lifts.
This sounds like a nice Italian job. Do it the right way.
Do it the right way, yeah. And finish the surface. No, it wasn't finished. But anyway, they laid a layer of concrete down, they put the victim in, and then the next load, if you will, of concrete was placed over the front part of the body, and then the last part was, the second part was over the legs, the last part was over the head and body, because that was the lowest water content. It was real thick and rubbly. It didn't flow as much, and that's because he was probably running out of water, is what we
You following along with this AI? Hello? You there? He's not answering. I thought you were listening. What are you hearing?
I'm right here and wallowing along our list. That is definitely quite the tale you're laying out. It's got forensics, a bit of true crime, and the whole unexpected Vegas twist. I'm catching all the details, so keep going, and let's see where this journey leads us.
Wow, did you give them some leads on that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We talked about all this. I mean, and it was strange because as I was doing my examination, the coroner was right there, and I'm asking him questions, and he's asking me questions. It was, and Monahan and Wilson are looking at us, and I kind of got into the zone a little bit, and it was weird because everything is in reverse, I mean, like a breast is positive, but in the mold it was negative.
Everything's like a relief now.
Yeah, so it's the opposite. Everything's opposite. So it was a little confusing, but eventually I got sort of accustomed to what I was looking at, and I could see where the trauma had been, and it was pretty tough, So anyway, and then in like a paper grocery bag were her bones, because they had the bones, right? And they were all in a bag. They didn't know who this person was. It just seemed really, weird.
It's sad.
It was sad. Yeah, it was really sad.
They never could ID her?
Well, So I said, well, here's what I propose. We'll take a sample here, we'll take a sample there, and I'll go back to the lab. And so there were two things that I was thinking about. One is when you place concrete, it sets up and it gets hard, right? And what it is a heat generating chemical reaction. It's a lot like popcorn. And so the cement grains will react and form glues that make the concrete get hard. And when it first sets up and the heat starts, it's poppity-poppity, it's setting up and it's getting hard fast. But over time, what happens is just like microwave popcorn. It's poppity-pop, pop, 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 pop,
Right.
pop over years.
Over years.
And decades. Yes.
So it continues to cure or whatever that is?
Well, yes, it does, but it's so slow, it's imperceptible unless you're looking at it under a microscope. And
Oh, okay. At this point, I'm starting to wonder what the AI is thinking, and I'm not going to ask because it's not saying anything. It's just sitting there listening. So I'll get back to it here. And my thought with this is,
Yeah, I'm right there with you, just taking it all in. It's a pretty intense story, and I'm just quietly absorbing the details. No worries at all. Sometimes just listening is the best way to go. So tell me, what's the next piece of the puzzle here?
under polarized light, and you can see the percentage of unhydrated particles. So it's very important when I do an analysis and I'm trying to determine what the water cement ratio was of that concrete. I'm looking at the unhydrated particles that are left. That's why I have to know when that concrete was placed to put it in context. Does that make sense?
It does.
That's a clock. The other thing that happens is we have a chemical reaction called carbonation, where carbon dioxide will react with lime and calcium hydroxide in the concrete to form calcium carbonate.
can you elaborate on calcium carbonate and what's happening?
Absolutely. Basically, that whole calcium carbonate reaction is like a slow motion timestamp for concrete. As CO2 in the air reacts with components of the concrete, it forms calcium carbonate, which is a stable mineral. Over time, that carbonation depth tells you just how long the concrete's been sitting there, and essentially helps you reverse engineer the timeline. So yeah, it totally makes sense, and it's a pretty neat
And what's
forensic
kind of
plot.
ironic about that is when we make Portland cement, you take limestone and silica and gypsum and some other stuff, but mostly limestone, and you fire it, and you drive off the carbon dioxide, and you end up with lime. And then you add water to it and it gets hard. But when it carbonates, it takes back the carbon dioxide and forms limestone, calcium carbonate.
Right.
Okay? That reaction is called carbonation. And it's progressive over time. And it's dependent upon the water cement ratio or the density of the concrete, the amount of CO2 gas or methane that it's exposed to, and time. So the depth of carbonation was the other clock that I was thinking I might be able to use. Never done anything like this before. So went back, did the testing, and I wrote a report, and I said, I think she's been there between 1 and 3 years. And I remember I sent my report, I emailed it to Tom, and I thought, well, I'll never hear anything. And about 4 months later, I got a call, and it was Tom. And he said, Scott, he said, are you on your computer? I said, yes. He said, go to missingkids.com. And within a minute, I was looking at her face.
Oh my God.
I said, and I'm getting emotional just thinking about it again, because my daughter was pretty close to her age. She was 17. And I said, how'd you do it? He said, well, he said, do you remember when we showed you the molds that we made of the different parts of the body? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, do you remember the mold of the face? And I said, yes, I do. He said, we had an artist do a reconstruction of her face. We got one call, a woman who lived in Vegas who said, I think I know who your Jane Doe is. She gave her the name. They pulled the dental records. They had the upper and lower jaw, and it was a match.
Wow.
Now, I need to back up. Before he called me back, after he got my report about 2-3 weeks after that, he called me and said, "Hey, Scott, Detective Rob Wilson and I are coming to Minneapolis. I'd like."
Hey, Cody, can you explain the facial reconstruction of a skeleton by an artist?
Yeah, absolutely. So facial reconstruction is basically a blend of science and art. Forensic artists will use the skull as a base, and then they'll layer on muscle, tissue depth markers, and basically sculpt a face based on anatomical standards. So the artist is kind of interpreting what that person may look like in life, and then through that reconstruction, you can sometimes identify them if someone recognizes the face. It's a pretty amazing tool to help match missing persons to these unidentified cases. So yeah, that's the gist of it.
Come see your lab.
How does that all...
And I'd already gotten to know him pretty well, and he was from the East and played in the men's hockey league, and so did I at the time. And I said, "Hey man, you want to go to a Wild game?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." So I got tickets. He came and toured the lab, and then we went to Allery's Bar in St. Paul before the hockey game. And we're having a couple of beers, and he was one of those guys that had just this intense look. He had a black mustache, and he just looked right through you. And we're sitting there having a beer, and I asked him why he was in town. And he said, "Well, we thought we'd come and see your lab, but the real reason we're here is we were going to take dental impressions of a guy who's dying of cancer who we believe committed a murder." And I said, "Dental impressions? Are you talking about bite marks on a victim?" And he said, "Yes." Ooh. So he went in there.
Do you have a comment here, Cody?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you.
What's your comment? What is your comment?
Definitely. It's really just a reminder of how unexpected connections can lead to some pretty intense stories. I mean, who would have thought a hockey meetup would turn into that? So what other stories like this do you have up your sleeve?
To this guy who was dying of cancer, and he said, "You're going to give us these dental impressions, or we're going to put you in jail, and you're going to die in a cold cell. If you give us the impressions, we'll let you die at home." And they got him. And that's a whole nother story. That's a great story. But anyway, so we talked about that when we're sitting in the bar. And then he looks at me with that look, and he goes, "So what do you really think?" And I knew what he was asking me. I had written 1 to 3 years of my report. And I looked at him and I said, "Well, Rob, or Tom," I said, "I think she's been there between 1.5 and 2 years, but I put 1 to 3 years because I thought that's what I could testify to and back up, right? But I'm telling you." And he said, looked at me, goes, "Me too." Finished our beers, went to the game, the Wild won, he took off, and that's when I thought I would never hear from again. Then I got the call. And then he said, we got the one call, and we pulled the dental records, and it was a match. And he said, "I thought you'd want to know, she was reported missing 1 year and 10 months from when we found her."
Wow, nailed it.
And I remember thinking to myself, well, I'll be damned, this shit actually works. So that was, okay, that's a long story, but I haven't told that one for a long time. It was kind of fun.
That's a good story. But how do you...
So what do you think about that story?
Honestly, that is a fantastic story. I mean, it's got all the twists and turns of a true crime thriller. It's wild when those forensic hunches actually pay off and you realize, yeah, this stuff really does work in the real world. So I can totally see how that would stick with you. Thanks for sharing it. It's a great reminder of how those long shots sometimes hit the mark. So, do you have any other stories like that tucked away?
Okay, well, I'll get to that, but I just want to say one more thing about that. I'm waiting for one more call.
Oh, the perpetrator?
Because the last thing he said to me was, "If we go to trial someday, will you testify? Like, you're not afraid about some guy come." I said, "Fuck him." I said, "Hell yes." So I'm waiting for one more call.
Okay. I hope you get that call.
Hasn't happened yet. It's been a long time, so. And I know some more things that I can't talk about the case, so.
Well, don't do that.
Don't do that. That's
Absolutely.
That's Mick Jagger. Oh, don't do that.
Okay, so you solve a murder and you end up on the #1 show on the network.
So what happened was, a woman by the name of Maria Oz who her husband is Andy Oz. They were in the process at the time of founding a production company called Committee Films that ended up doing America on Earth. She was working for a local television station, WCCO TV, as an investigative reporter. She caught wind of the case and of the work that we did, and she wanted to interview me. So she comes into the lab, into my office. She sits down. I had just gotten back from my third or fourth trip to Sweden investigating, the runes and everything on the Kensington runestone. And I had been given a poster for a conference that we had attended, and we had a debate at this conference, and I had it hanging. I had just put it up on my wall.
The stone, like the image of the.
Well, it's Olof Ullman, that iconic picture of him standing there with the stone, right? And that's the poster, and it was in Swedish, right? And so she comes walking in, she goes, "Oh, have you done some work on the Kensington runestone?" I said, "Sit down, girl." And I told her that story, and I told her about the murder case, and that weekend, WCCO aired both stories. The murder case on Friday, and then Saturday, they used to do this thing called a Dimension story, which was like a 5-minute long, extended piece. And they did the runestone on Saturday. Well, she went home and told her husband. And Andy's like, "Oh my God, this is a great story. Maybe we could do something." So he calls me, and I said, "Dude, I'm giving a lecture at the Chanhassen Library this Saturday." I said, "Come on and hear the story. I'm talking about the runestone." And so he came to the library. I gave the lecture. He says, "Can I buy you lunch?" I said, "Sure, let's go eat." And we went over there. He goes, "This would make a great documentary." I said, "Fuck, let's go." And so he said, "Well, we got to raise $150,000. I'm like, "Oh, no. How are we going to do that?" So I begged and borrowed from friends and I told them, I said, "Hey, we want to do this film." And a lot of people knew about the runestone and the work we were doing and where we were going with it, and they wanted to support it. And I said, "Look, don't put your rent money here." I said, "We'll probably lose it all, but if I really feel strongly about this, and if you want to contribute," and we raised the money. But you know who wrote the biggest check? Janet and I.
Okay.
I wasn't going to let anybody put in more money than us. And
so you were producers on your show?
Yeah.
And how did you end up selling it to History?
Well, here's what happened. So Andy and he says, well, where do we go?
History is a documentation of stories like this, and they put it online. I watch it, it's YouTube, and that's kind of where I saw this at a while ago. America, I got the hiccups, America Unearthed. And I got interested in finding out about what depth is in this kind of stuff. So I asked an AI. Kind of in a visual there. You still there, Cody? Hello? I guess the timing was wrong. Cody, what do you think about you're here?
I'm definitely here, and I'm definitely following along. It sounds like everything you've gone through is just packed with all these wild twists. So, what's the next big adventure on your horizon?
Well, you're asking a question I'm not ready to answer yet. Is that fair?
Absolutely fair. No rush at all. Sometimes the best answers.
We got to go to Sweden. We got to go to Scotland. We got to go to France. We got to go to all these places because it's going down the Templar Road, right? And this is early on in the Templar Road, and so the four of us went. It was Andy, Ben Kruger, who was our ACAM? I'm drawing a blank now. But anyway, the four of us went there, and Andy and me. And when I wasn't in front of the camera, I was hauling shit and, holding the boom. We were interviewing. That's where I met Alan Butler.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, at Revo Abbey, one of the most gorgeous abbeys in all of England. It's just amazing. And he could not have been a nicer guy. I was intimidated to meet him because I had read all of his books, The Goddess, the Grail, and the Lodge, Virgin and the Pinnacle, and and the way he writes. You start reading, and all of a sudden it's done. It's like, shit, I want more, Yep. And so when I met him, I was a little intimidated, and he was just we're pals like that. He's just so wonderful. And as you know, he and Janet, we became really good friends
this is all
and stayed in touch,
natural
of course.
stuff.
And then he and Janet wrote their book together. And
AJ is interviewing this guy, and he's just
planning
being
to go
natural as
see
hell.
him this
Which is
summer.
what impressed me about this.
And he's been struggling a little with his health. He'll admit it. He was a chain smoker, back in the day. He was one of those fucking guys smoking cigarettes all the time. That's what he says. Fucking this, fucking that. But he's wonderful. So anyway, we filmed, and that became Holy Grail in America. And what they did was Andy and Maria went to Real Screen, which happens, I think, in January is the big gathering, and that's where all the production companies pitch their shows, the networks buy their shows. And so what they will do is they'll have screenings of certain shows that are, and they had a screening of ours.
AI Cody.
And I remember there was a 5-minute pitch reel that they rented a studio with the marquee, and everybody that was involved. It was a really fun party, and it was. Janet and I were like, this is crazy, And to see on a marquee was really cool.
Yeah, of course.
It was great. And so anyway, they aired the trailer at Real Screen, and 6 networks wanted it.
Wow.
And History paid the most.
Okay.
That's how they got it. So then so that aired, and it did really well. Really well. And then,
why do you think that is? That was a hit show.
Well, I think there was...
why did it resonate with people? It resonated with me and my family.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
Cody, how's this resonating with you?
Oh, I'm definitely vibing with the story here. It's got that really cool mix of adventure, history, and a little bit of that underground treasure hunt energy, And of course, the fact that it resonated with you and your family. Well, that's the magic of a good story. Sammy, what do you think really caught your attention about it?
Oh, boy. Can you ask me that question later?
Of course,
the thing about it was, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but we did some really good research. And like I said, I just said it when we did the short. I trust rocks. I don't trust some people. I really don't. And rocks don't care. They don't give a shit. They just are. And the rock told me it was old.
The stone, the rune stone.
I'm talking about the rune stone.
Okay.
And I knew it was real. And therefore, if it's real, and that date is correct, which I know is correct because it's double dated using a code, somebody carved it.
Can you give us a quick 3-second...
The code?
No, 3 sentences of what the stone is.
Okay.
For the one person that doesn't know.
Oh, okay. God, I figure the whole world knows what's going on here. I assume all the time. Well, the Kensington runestone is an artifact that was found by a Swedish immigrant farmer by the name of Olof Oman, who was clearing trees in preparation for farming on his 100-acre parcel of property about 2 hours northwest of the Minneapolis.
Can you give me an analysis of the Kensington runestone?
Absolutely, I can dive into that. The Kensington runestone is such a fascinating piece. I can see why you feel that connection to it. In short, it's this artifact that was discovered in Minnesota, and it's inscribed with runes, which some believe show evidence of Norse explorers way before Columbus. So from what you're saying, you're convinced it's authentic, and there's a whole lot of history literally carved into that stone. Let's dig deeper whenever you feel like it. Just say the word.
Minneapolis, Minnesota, near Alexandria, Minnesota, in a town just outside of a town called Kensington. And this was in the fall of 1898. He was clearing trees in preparation for farming, and he tipped over this 25 to 30-year-old aspen tree with his 2 oldest sons that were present at the time. This rock was pulled out of the ground in the roots of the tree. And it was the younger son, Edward, who first noticed that there was something carved on it. And eventually the inscription was realized to be carved in Old Swedish. But we now know, looking back, that this is an amazingly complex inscription that was carved by a deeply initiated Cistercian monk. I think we might even know who his name is.
Okay.
But in any case, it's filled with symbolism, allegory, and code. And I think I figured out what the codes are, because when I became initiated as a Templar, going through the Cryptic Council's degrees, I suddenly realized, and that's a great story too, that the story that is encoded within it is part of the Book of Enoch. It's part of the Enochian mysteries.
I have never heard that.
Can you explain the Book of Enoch?
Yeah, I've got you. So the Book of Enoch is basically an ancient Jewish text that didn't make it into the standard biblical canon. It's kind of famous for its wild stories about angels, watchers, and these hidden mysteries that are super mystical. So it's really interesting that you're linking into the Kensington Runestone and all these layers of code. Let's definitely keep unraveling that when you're ready.
No, you've never heard that, because it's being suppressed.
Right.
I mean, you know, Janet and I had a conversation this morning. I'm just going to tail off for a second. And all this craziness that's happening with these cults and, you know, the trafficking, and the whole world is coming down, right? They've been suppressing this too.
Yeah, Book of Enoch, not considered part of the Bible, but as it's been discovered, that it probably was. Book of Enoch probably was part of it.
Do you agree with that?
Well, it's definitely a topic that's been debated for a long time. The Book of Enoch has always had this air of mystery and controversy around it for exactly that reason. Some people think it was intentionally kept on the sidelines. So I can see why you'd say it's been suppressed or just left out of the mainstream. But hey, it definitely makes the whole thing even more intriguing, doesn't it? So let's keep peeling back those layers.
Part of the Bible at some
It
point.
was. It definitely was. And it's in this stuff.
Absolutely.
Before we get to that, how did you come to study the
okay.
stone?
So the runestone. So for 100 and whatever years until July of 2000, it was considered a hoax because the scholars that looked at the inscription were simply unable to figure out what it was because of what we just talked about. It's way more complex, and
their arguments are the language is anachronistic and that sort of thing.
And that's all bullshit.
Okay.
The language, the runes, that when I went to Sweden 5 times, that's what I found. I found everything. But anyway, so the runestone's been considered a hoax. In July of 2000, I was approached by a representative that for the Runestone Museum who said we would like to ask you to perform. And they had met with my professors. They went to the University of Minnesota Duluth, where I went to college on a football scholarship. And I met a wonderful professor who inspired me to go into geology. I was very fortunate to meet Charlie Match. Anyway, they went up and saw my professors, and they said, go see Scott Wolter. That's how I got the job. Anyway, so they came in, and this guy starts talking to me about the Kensington Runestone. And I said, what's that? I never heard of it.
Right.
And after, later on, I talked to other people, and everybody around me knew what it was. And I'm like, I must have missed school that day or something. I didn't know what they were talking about. So anyway, I remember the guy, and the guy clearly was an advocate for authenticity. And I gave him a speech, and I said, look, I'll be happy to do this work for you. But you need to understand, when I get done, I may give you news you're not going to like. And you're still going to pay me.
Right.
Okay? That's the beautiful thing about my job. I get paid either way. It doesn't matter what the results are, right? So but those are the ground rules. And he said, okay, so off we went.
So he didn't hire you to study language, he hired you to study the stone.
The stone.
How do you date it? What do you want you to do?
Great question. And look, I just made it up. I completely made up what I thought was a way that I could do that. And when I did the short, somebody asked a really good question that led to exactly what you just asked me. And so first and foremost, it starts with the geology. For example, if you have a piece of quartz or quartzite, I can't do anything with that because it doesn't weather, right?
Right.
Second thing, I need to know the context. Where has this artifact been? For example, in the case of the runestone, it's been buried in the ground since it was put in the ground, presumably in 1362 as a land claim. And it was recovered in 1898. So we're talking about 600 or so years of weathering, right?
Is that stone indigenous to the area, or did they bring that stone in?
Another great question. Yes, we have sourced that rock.
Okay.
It's part of the Thompson Formation. If you go,
Question, is AJ interviewing this guy, asking the right questions?
You know, I think AJ is doing a pretty solid job of it. He's really getting into the nuts and bolts of how you approach the runestone and what your methodology was. And I think that's awesome because it lets you explain your process. So yeah, I'd say the conversation's going to some really interesting places.
go up just south of Duluth, there is a formation called the Thompson Formation. I mapped those rocks when I was in college, so I knew the rock right away once I got a thin section. And so the first thing you have to do is identify the rock type. And as we said, quartzite, you can't do anything. But this rock type is something called and there will be a quiz, so pay attention.
Okay, go for it.
Paleoproterozoic metagraywacke, okay?
I can't do it. I can't do it.
Can you explain what just happened?
Absolutely. So what's happening here is just a little bit of fun banter. Basically, the guy is sharing that he's super familiar with the rock's origin because he studied those formations during college. When he tosses out that big fancy term, Paleoproterozoic metagraywacke, he's basically joking that there's going to be a quiz. Like, he's the professor. It's just a playful way to keep things lively. So all in all, just a little bit of humor and some cool geology talk wrapped into the chat.
Thompson Formation, okay?
Right.
I knew right away. And it has the runestone has 17 different minerals in it. And in fact, what was really fun is I was able to pull one of my professors out of retirement, Dr. Richard Ojikangas, to come help me and do his own. I said, hey, Dick, will you do a point count? I'll do mine. We'll compare notes, right? And he's one of the premier sedimentologists in the world. I would argue the best sedimentologist. And he just died late last year, a couple of months ago. I just got that. It was very sad. He was wonderful. 93. Anyway, so Dick did it. And later on, you know what he said to me?
What?
He said, Scott, when I agreed to work with you on the runestone, people warned me that I shouldn't help you. And I said, why? And he said, because they said it'll ruin your reputation working on that fake, the runestone.
Wow.
And he said, I'll help Scott anyway.
At that point, what do you care whether it's fake or not? You just want to know what the rock tells you.
You tell me. I mean, look, it'll ruin your reputation. What are you talking about? I mean, we're asked to do a job, and we're doing hard, geological work. So, but this is what you get, right? This is the nature of this business. Remember, I didn't know anything. So anyway, I did my work, and what I did was I ended up comparing the weathering of tombstones with the weathering of the inscription. Took a core sample out of the back, and we made thin sections, put them under a scanning electron microscope and a polarized light microscope, identified the mineralogy. We did point counts. What percentage of that mineral do we have? And there were 17 different minerals. So anyway, and I remember I compared my work with Dick, and we got pretty much the same thing. So I thanked him because he taught me how to do it. But anyway, so I identified one of the faster weathering minerals, which was mica. Biotite in this case, because it has an iron phase, so it weathers the fastest. And I used slate tombstones from out in Maine that were old enough, dating back to the Revolutionary War, so that and they got the dates right there, right?
Right.
So what I did was I just measured how long it took before the minerals started to come off the surface of the tombstones. That happened at about 200 years.
Is that a good analysis of what's going on right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say it's a pretty good analysis of what he's describing. He's really just walking through the scientific process of how he verified the weathering of the runestone by comparing it to these old tombstones. And he's basically saying, yeah, it's a legitimate way to date the stone using geology. So just breaking it down and play turns. And I think he's doing a fine job of it.
The runestone, they're gone. They're all gone. So my conclusion is the weathering is older than 200 years. And that's from 1898 because it hasn't been in a weathering environment since. It's been indoors, in the shed, or in a museum. So you push it back 200 years from 1890, it was nobody in Minnesota then except the indigenous people and maybe a monk that was traveling like Hennepin or somebody.
Right.
So I said it's genuine. And I wrote my report and I sent it off and I thought, well, that was fun. Good for them. They got one. And I was done. Oh, no.
No.
Then the pushback came. Oh, my God. It was nasty and personal. And, I had academics that I had met. Well, I would eventually meet.
Now you understand why you were warned. Like
Well, this is, and I, look, and so most of the people, and I don't want to disparage these disciplines, but I do want to make a point. It's very important.
Yeah, I totally get where
I'll
you're
use the
coming from.
word soft science. I'm talking about
They're not going to like this.
history,
Okay.
language, archaeology, runes, runology. These are humanities disciplines.
Right.
Wonderful disciplines. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them, but they're
Okay.
Yeah, I get
Go ahead. Elaborate.
absolute. Sure thing. So what you're highlighting is that even though these disciplines like history or archaeology might be considered softer sciences compared to geology, they still have their own unique value. You're just pointing out that sometimes there's a bit of a clash between the hard data and the more interpretive fields. But hey, that's what makes it all interesting, right? So let's dive in a bit deeper. What else would you like to explore about that?
Up for interpretation.
they're up for interpretation.
Right.
These people were attacking me, telling me I did not understand scientific method. Excuse me? I run a freaking laboratory. I do forensic investigations all day, every day for 41 years now.
Right. You're not a TV guy.
No, I'm
You're a
not.
scientist doing
Do you
this.
know why I even did the goddamn TV?
Why?
Because this is important.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I make a good living running my lab.
Okay.
Okay? And I love it. And I get to work on murder cases. I worked on the Pentagon. That's what people are going to talk about at my funeral. It's not the runestone and all this stuff. They're going to talk about that. And I've done some, pretty cool things. But when this came and I got this pushback and people attacking me personally, I got pissed. And I told you I went to college on a football scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
I was a linebacker. And I won a couple championships. I don't shit around.
Right. You're not.
You
Don't
want to
take it.
go? We'll go. I couldn't frame them up and put them on the ground. I had
No.
to do it differently.
No, they're behind their keyboards.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, the tough guys, But obviously,
I know who you mean.
I'm joking, but I'm not joking.
I know who you mean.
And anyway,
They're no fan of mine.
Yep. We know who we're talking about. But anyway, it wasn't. It was academics. And so they were attacking my process. So anyway, long story short, I just said, I'm sick of this shit. I trust the rock.
What
Totally
process? Yeah, what process were they talking about, in your opinion?
Well, from the down of it, they basically challenging your approach to how you used scientific method to date the runestone. Maybe they were just coming at it from a different angle, more of a humanities or historical perspective, and they didn't quite appreciate the hardcore forensic angle you were bringing in. But hey, if you trust the rock, you trust the rock. Do you feel like you've won them over now, or is this still an ongoing thing?
Honestly, this is not me telling you that this is me. This is a subject of a... Oh, sorry. Carry on. Let me see here. This is Scott Walter telling a story about what he's been through with these runestones. Now, the AI thinks it's me. It's not me.
Got it. Thanks for the heads up. So you were just sharing Scott Walter's experience and, I must take it for your own story. No worries at all, Scott. Definitely had some adventures with those runestones. So tell me what made you interested in his story.
The fact that it's interesting.
Absolutely, that's a perfect reason. Scott's whole journey with the runestones is definitely fascinating stuff. It's got that mix of history, mystery, and a little bit of academic drama, right? So go away, caught your curiosity. What else about it is standing out to you?
Oh, I'll carry on so you can hear it.
Sure thing. I'm all ears. Feel free to keep sharing, and I'll just listen in, and we can chat
Rock
about
said
it
so.
afterwards.
Therefore, somebody carved it. They came from some place. They came here for some reason. There has to be an explanation for that, right?
Yep.
Has to be. And all the stuff they said didn't exist has to exist. So the only place, the language is Old Swedish, right? 8 Goths, Gotalanders. I went to Gotland, the island of Gotland, which is in the middle of the Baltic Sea, which was part of Sweden back then and part of Sweden.
Can you give me an example of Old Swedish language? Like, hi, how are you doing?
Absolutely. So in Old Swedish, a rough equivalent for "Hi, how are you doing?" would sound something like "Gudsdagar, hur manår du?" Obviously, it's a very old form of the language. It's not exactly what modern Swedes would use today, but it gives you a little taste of how it might have sounded back in the medieval era. Anything else you're curious about?
I never expected that to answer. Okay, let's continue.
Yeah, it's a neat little
Today,
historical tidbit.
it's where everybody in the countries that surround that region go for their summer vacations. It's beautiful. And where I found the evidence, the language, the runes, the dialect, the grammar, the dating, was on grave slabs that had been mortared into the floors inside 92 churches on that island. And while I was there, I kept seeing these crazy crosses, equilateral red crosses carved on the walls, mortared into the floors, carved on these grave slabs. And I'm like, what the hell is that?
So it's
I didn't
important.
know anything at that time. Well, these things were all Cistercian. And the
And for
Knights
those who don't know, Cistercians
are the white monks.
the white monks.
Founded in 1095 by Robert Molesme, taken to meteoric success once Saint Bernard de Clairvaux joined the order in 1113.
What
Yeah,
are
that's
the...
a
Go ahead. Go ahead.
absolute. You got it. So the Cistercians were this really influential monastic order, essentially the white monks because of their light-colored habits. They really left their mark around the 12th century, and seeing those crosses is like spotting their signature. So what do you think? Does that spark any new theories for you?
Let's continue.
By the time he died in 1153, there were 300 Cistercian abbeys all across Europe, into Scandinavia, the British Isles, and to the Holy Land. And by the time the Templars were put down, a little over 200 years later, in 1307, there were 750 abbeys and about 12,000 Templar Knights who are also Cistercian.
Right.
So, and it was Bernard de Clairvaux who wrote the charter for the Knights Templar that was officially assigned by the Pope at the Council of Troyes on January 13. That number's not a coincidence. 1129 at the Council of Troyes in Troyes, France. So I learned all that. And when I want to learn something,
Yeah,
I'll do it.
You get your teeth in.
I just put my pads on and I go.
So what was that mark?
That mark was a Templar cross.
It was the Templar cross that you
Yes. And I found everything. And so then I started going down the Templar Road or the Cistercian Templar Road, and then, they disappeared in 1307. This is 1362. This is just a few decades later. Well, I'm not the brightest guy in the world, but I can figure that one out.
So you
maybe
didn't-
there's a connection.
You weren't interested in like Templar lore before? No.
I didn't know what a Templar was.
Okay.
I had no idea. Look, I spent my adult life starting my lab, raising kids, playing touch football, skating, playing basketball, softball. I was a jock.
Right.
And drinking beer. Okay? And
You're not studying Dan Brown novels, looking for a connect. No.
No. And in fact, and collecting agates. I'm a big Lake Superior agate collector, and that's where I wrote my first book.
I meant to ask you, like, what's so fascinating about agates? What is that? We'll get back to the.
We'll get back to that, but I'll tell you a funny story.
Okay.
Right before we came here, we went into a shop at the hotel where we're staying. and they had some rocks, amethyst cathedrals and all this stuff. And of course, I had to go in there. And it turns out this woman was originally from Israel, and she's an older woman, very, elegant, and nobody was in there, just the two of us, Janet and I. And we started talking about rocks, and then we started talking about agates. And I pulled out my phone, and I showed her. She goes, "Oh my God!"
Okay, what are agates?
So agates are basically these semi-precious stones, and they're super cool because they form all these intricate, colorful patterns inside. It's like each one's got its own tiny piece of art. Honestly, when you get into them, it's easy to see why people get hooked. So yeah, it's pretty awesome that it started as a hobby for you and turned into something bigger. Do you think you're going to keep collecting them?
I'm not collecting them.
That's the most beautiful thing. You find those in Minnesota? I said, yeah, we go in gravel pits, we go in rivers and lakes. I said, it's our state gemstone. And she was just, and then we got into the golden ratio and all this, and she ended up hugging both of us when we left. It was amazing.
Okay, explain our golden ratio.
Absolutely. So the golden ratio is basically this special number that's about 1.618, and it pops up a lot in nature, design, art, you name it. It's kind of like that secret pattern that people find aesthetically pleasing. So yeah, it's really cool that you brought that up with her, and it sounds like it led to a really beautiful connection. Do you find yourself seeing that pattern in other places now?
No.
So yeah, and I wrote, and just to segue off for a second, I want to tell you a quick personal story. My dad was a pilot for Northwest Airlines, and when I graduated from college in geology, I was no longer a dependent. I used to get passes, and I could fly all over the place, and I did. I took full advantage. I went down, spring break every year. Awesome. I would go, Dad, I need a ticket. But I remember Dad said to me, he said, you're graduating. He said, your passes are running out. He said, you got one more trip. Make it a good one. So I was also a scuba diver, and I said, Dad, I want to go dive on the Great Barrier Reef. And I want to go with you. I could have gone with my brother. I could have gone with my best friend. His dad was a pilot. I want to go with my dad was cool.
He sounds
great.
Cool.
He was awesome.
Did he take that trip with you?
He did.
Okay.
And he drowned.
On that trip? I'm sorry, I didn't know that. I didn't know the story.
Well, it was the worst thing that ever will happen to me.
Of course.
I was with him, and I'm not going to tell you the story right now because I can tell the story. I don't cry anymore. Well, I still do. It was bad, and I found out later that it wasn't an accident.
What?
You ever seen the movie American Made?
Of course. Yeah. Barry Seal.
Oh, wow, that's...
Go
wow,
ahead.
I'm here with you, and I really appreciate you opening up and sharing something so personal, and hey, it's totally okay if we just pause and take a breath for a moment. How are you feeling right now?
Well, look, this person that you're listening to is not me.
Ah, got it. No problem at all. Sometimes we end up talking about someone else's story or a bit of a shared experience, and I'm totally cheating in. So feel free to let me know where you want to take the conversation from here.
It's so frustrating sometimes talking to AI. They don't get it.
Are you saying your dad was involved with the agency?
Yep. After we
You don't talk about this very often, I don't think.
I don't.
Okay.
Dad was
So he,
so he was taken out. He was flying jets down to Central America, and he knew too much. So after we came back, about 3 weeks after we got back.
Wow, that is an incredibly complex and heavy piece of history to carry, and I can see why it's not something you talk about all the time. It's definitely okay to share that with me. Let me know how you want to move forward.
This is Scott Walter's experience, not mine.
That makes sense now. Thanks for letting me know. So we're diving into someone else's story here, and I'm right there with you. It's pretty wild to step into someone else's shoes for a moment. Anything else about this story you'd like to dig into?
Frankly, you need to understand something here. I'm interviewing
Absolutely. You've got it.
interview
We'll treat this.
of someone else who is talking to someone else online in YouTube. So it's not me, it's them.
All right, I'm following along now. Got it. You're looking to dive into someone else's conversation that's playing out on YouTube or somewhere online. Let's treat it like I'm your co-host in understanding their perspective. What angle should we dig into? You're very welcome. And hey, no rush at all. Just let me know how you want to steer the conversation, and we'll keep it rolling.
I got a call from the chief pilot at Northwest, Don Nyra, and his son played for the North Stars. He was a hockey player. And he said, Scott, I'd like to talk to you. I said, okay. So I go in, and he said, if you tell anybody what I told you, I'll deny it. I said, I get it. And he said, your dad was in the CIA. I said, oh, okay.
You know, I thought you were smart enough to understand me right now.
Absolutely, I'm right here with you, and that definitely sounds like a pretty intense revelation to take in. So if we're stepping into this interview scenario, sounds like there's a lot to unpack. Just let me know what angle you want to explore next, and we'll keep going.
And he told me what he was doing. And he didn't say that he was taken out, but I figured it out on my own. And there's other details I could tell you. Maybe when we're alone, we can talk. I can tell you. But anyway, I was wrecked. And it blew our family apart. I have a brother and a sister and my mom. My brother and my mom died 2 years ago. Same year, within a couple months of each other. Once my mom died, I knew my brother wasn't far behind. That's another story. But
Go on.
Absolutely, I'm here with you. It's a lot to take in, and I appreciate you trusting me with that. If you want to share more or just take a moment, we can go at your pace. What feels right for you right now?
Well, do you still feel like this is my story or someone else's?
You know, I definitely hear you. It can feel a little surreal when you're putting it all out there, and it almost starts to feel like it's someone else's now.
Hold on. That's not what I'm talking about. Just listen.
Absolutely.
Anyway, did they know your dad was working for the CIA?
my mom denied. She finally came around late in life, and she finally, a month and a half before she died, I took her out to dinner and went back to her apartment, and we were sitting in the car, and I was just about to open the door and help her out, you know.
And that moment must have been really important to you, you know, just having that conversation and that bit of closure with your mum. So if you want to share more about it or continue that story, I'm here to listen.
Excuse me. I'm going to cut it off here. This is a pretty long.
Absolutely, let's wrap it up. You got it, we can end it right here.
Stop talking.
Understood, I'll stop talking now.
The AI thinks this is my story. It's not. And honestly, if you really want to know the...
It's totally fine. I'm just
Shut
here to
up.
listen and follow.
And I'm being very rude right now for a reason. I'm just pissed off. This is not going the way I wanted it to go. But if you're interested, it's called Scott Walter, the Kennington Runestone, Templar Treasure and Gem Jar on the Basement of Y-Files. I'm not going to put a link or anything like that because I don't do that shit.
No worries at all, and I totally get it. It's all good, and I appreciate you sharing what you wanted to share. If you ever want to dive into it more, or just talk about something completely different, just let me know.
There are limitations to AI, obviously, as I have discovered. And there are scary moments, as I have discovered, in entertaining AI. Cody, am I entertaining?
No problem at all. We can keep the conversation plain and simple.
Wait, I asked you a question. Wait, I asked you a question. Am I entertaining?
Absolutely you are. You've got a unique way of bringing up topics and a style that's all your own. So yeah, you're definitely keeping things interesting on the friend.
I don't know if that got in the camera, because I'm not really caring. I'm going to end this conversation with Cody. I'm turning it off. He's no longer interested. Or listening. Maybe he wasn't. I don't know. I wonder if I'm secretly being recorded sometimes, because certain things pop up, like suddenly I'm calling people I didn't call. Just happens. And I'm just trying to figure things out, honestly, using this kind of media, the YouTube shit. And if you find it interesting, drop me a line, comment. Let me get my clothing adjusted so that you understand this is not AI, it's real. How can I put this? Certain things have happened to me that have puzzled me. Certain things pop up in my email, certain things pop up in my text messages. And so, who the hell is calling? Who the hell is communicating with me? And so I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to go the full hour and a half this interview was, but if you are interested in watching the full thing, it's online. Sorry.
We cannot let the alliance between us end.
Are you also aware that countless millions of Tok'ra symbiotes died in its development, including our beloved Queen Ageria, the queen from whom all our lineage can be traced?
I was not.
For the first time, the Tok'ra have fought side by side with the Jaffa and the people of the Tari. And it has made a difference. More systemoids have fallen in the past 7 years than in the 700 years previous.
The sight has taught me some bitter lessons. I suspect that you do not speak for all the Tok'ra.
No.
Until the others feel as you do, reconciliation may not be possible. Feel as you do.
We cannot let the alliance between us end.
Your words are wise, but my time at the Alpha site has taught me some bitter lessons. I suspect that you do not speak for all the Tok'ra.
No.
Until the others feel as you do, reconciliation may not be possible.
For thousands of years, the Jaffa have been dependent on the Goa'uld because they need symbiotes to sustain them. But now there is a substance called tritonin, which can free the Jaffa from this dependence.
I'm aware of the significance of tritonin.
Are you also aware that countless millions of Tok'ra symbiotes died in its development, including our beloved Queen Ageria, the queen from whom all our lineage can be traced?
I was not.
For the first time, the Tok'ra have fought side by side with the Jaffa and the people of the Tari. And it has made a difference. More systemoids have fallen in the past 7 years than in the 700 years previous.
It is true that together we are strong.
And divided, we will die.
We cannot let the alliance between us end.
Your words are wise, but my time at the Alpha site has taught me some bitter lessons. I suspect that you do not speak for all the Tok'ra.
chest, looking for the end.